welcome back to Medicine in the Making, where medicine meets meaning and future cures come to life. I'm Maya, and in each episode, I sit down with real healthcare professionals to give you guys the inside look of what it's really like to work in the medical field. And today, I'm excited to welcome you guys, Dr. Carmen, to the podcast. And her journey in medicine began at Albany State University, followed by medical school at Eastern Virginia Medical School, and an OBGYN residency at St. Joseph's Hospital in Chicago. She later built her career in Atlanta, where she's made an incredible impact not only at practicing obstetrician gynecologist, but she's also a teacher, mentor, and a leader. And as many of you guys know, OBGYN special in women's reproductive health, pregnancy, and childbirth, playing a vital role in some of the most important moments in people's lives. Dr. McGee's work goes far beyond the exam room, and she's passionate about educating future healthcare professionals and has taken on leadership roles in both the hospital and in the wider physician community. And is there anything else that I'm missing?
You said it so much better than I ever could.
So my first question is, what first inspired you to work in this field?
Well, if I have to be honest with you, the one thing I said that I would not do is be an OBGYN. So when I went to medical school, I always knew I wanted to be a physician, but I walked in day one and I said, I would never be an OBGYN. And I said it with conviction too. And then what happened is that you- I started exploring medicine and taking classes and going through rotations, I was like, man, this is really fun. You know,
Mm,
it still took some convincing though, let me tell you.
what can you talk through what your educational journey was like in college and medical
Sure.
school?
Yeah, yeah. So I finished high school in Albany, Georgia. I had planned to go to Spelman and forgot that I had applied for a presidential scholarship at Albany State. And so the president of the school showed up and said, "Hey, if you come here, you'll never pay for college." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." Let me switch that up. So I did, and it turned out to be a blessing. I was exposed to a dynamic science department that, even though Albany State is an HBCU, we happen to have one of the top um, programs for getting students into medical school, and we were ranked in the top 10 in the country per capita. So from there, I got accepted into every medical school that I applied to, which is unusual. Usually you hear that people are kind of on pins and needles, and certainly I was. But having gone to this HBCU with this phenomenal science program and all these opportunities to do research all over the country, like while I was in school, while I was in college, got me into every medical school. And then from medical school, like I said, I started exploring the different disciplines of medicine, and I was like, wow, this OB thing is kind of something I like to do. So from there, I applied for my OBGYN residency in Chicago, and the rest is history.
What do you think the most challenging part of training was?
Oh my goodness. Back when I trained, it was the hours. So we would work 36 hours straight, and there were times that we would log like 120 hours in a week. And it seems unreal, right? It felt unreal. So, you know, y- training in Chicago, especially in the winter, it could be very dark in the morning and very dark at 6 o'clock. So if I came in at 6 a.m. and left at 6 p.m. the next day, sometimes I'd be like, which one is it? Is it morning or, or night? So the hours were really tough.
Well, after you finish, what does a typical day look like for you now?
Ooh, so it is very different now. I still work a lot of hours, but it's just different. Um, so a typical day usually involves being in the office and seeing, a fair number of patients throughout the day. Because I am an OB and I traditionally have worked where I might be the only OB in the practice. Sometimes I'll get called out in the middle of patients to go deliver babies. Um, I go out and deliver babies at night, or at least at some point I was doing that. Um, and then I usually have a dedicated surgery day. So for as everybody thinks of me as delivering babies, but I also do a lot of surgery. So I do hysterectomies, I remove ovarian cysts, I do cervical surgeries, all sorts of stuff like that. So I typically have a dedicated surgery day during the week. And I have to round. Oh, how could I forget that? So when you have a patient who's in the hospital, you have to see them on follow-up. So in addition to seeing the patients in the office, in addition to doing surgery, in addition to doing deliveries, I see patients on follow-up in the hospital until they're ready to be discharged home.
Okay, how do you usually balance all of that? Because that seems like a lot.
It is a lot, but it became easier for me when I put myself in the role of the patient or their family. And I thought to myself, well, how would I want somebody to treat me? So I usually come in and I'm like upbeat and bubbly, even though I'm really tired or sometimes I'm cranky or whatever. But I come in like that because I'm like, if I were the patient, how would I want somebody to treat me? And it made it easier. It made it so much easier.
What part of your job brings you the most joy?
You know, oh goodness, it used to be delivering the babies because it's like really cool. When a baby comes out, their head goes through all these motions. And so it's really cool to see that, right? But as I've gotten older, my favorite part is actually the interactions with the dads because a lot of times dads are kind of left out of the process. And so they really love it when they're brought into the process of having a baby and making their family.
Oh, that's wonderful. How do you support patients not just physically but emotionally during some of the most life-changing moments?
It's interesting. In OB/GYN, we see the best the majority of the time, but we also see the worst at times. And so staying even keeled and always approaching patients from a perspective of respect, trying to communicate with them what I know so that we can make a shared decision about their care. Um, and just kind of in general feeling some sense of compassion for what they're going through. Um, it just allows me to kind of, and sometimes I get to be a big sister, sometimes I get to be an auntie, never a grandma. I'm too young for that. But it allows me to play additional roles in their process. So it's really, really cool.
So also you said before that you've worked in a lot of leadership roles in the hospital and in physician settings. How did you get there?
Well, it was interesting. Sometimes somebody just taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, can you come help out?" Um, when I first came out of residency, I worked downtown at Atlanta Medical Center, and this was back when we had residents. And I just happened to really enjoy teaching the residents and the medical students. And so they ended up voting me their teaching attending of the year, which was unheard of because they had never done that for an African American and definitely not for a woman. So here you have this young girl out, and I was like, but I just enjoyed it. And so it came through. Then as my career progressed, um, I just saw that there was a need for, how do I put it, further representation as it relates to the administrative part of medicine. So I was asked to be the department chair, and then I served in that role for 4 years. And then my peers voted me chief of staff, and it was funny because right after after they voted for me to be chief of staff, our practice got bought out, and I didn't get a chance to do it. But that was actually really, really cool. It was just a situation where they tapped me on the shoulder and they were like, "Hey, you know, you see us working what we're doing. Can you help us?" And I said, "Yeah." And I felt like we needed the representation.
What have you learned most about that whole situation?
Which situation?
Just all the situations that made you get to a leadership role.
You know, how do I put it? I would be in medical executive committee, and I would literally be the only African American female, the, the only African American period at time, right? And you'd be sitting in this room, and nobody talked about where they went to school. Nobody knew if somebody went to Harvard or if they went to Tai Tech. The reality is that when you make it to that table and you make it in that room, you belong there. And no matter what your start came from, it's where you are at that time. So I learned the importance of knowing my worth and knowing that I belong exactly where I was when I was there.
So, what would you say to other students who also want to become leaders like you someday?
Know that you can, know that you should. And I always say this: never be afraid of failure, meaning don't deny yourself an opportunity to do something because you're afraid you're going to fail. It could happen. And if it does, guess what? You start over and you keep it moving. I will often tell my son this. He didn't always listen. I'm like, as much as you can, aim for the stars, settle for the moon. Okay? But if you aim for the stars and you don't make it and all you do is make it to the moon, well, that ain't bad. So,
And then also, through all of your journey, what was one of the hardest moments and how did you overcome it?
ooh, hardest moment. Let me think. Probably in residency. I was ready to quit because it was hard. Residency was really hard. And so my mom, who is hilarious, was like, "What are you gonna do? Go to work at McDonald's?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "Well, then get it together." I was like, "Okay." So, I mean, you go through these hard parts of life and they don't last forever. You stick to it, you push through it, and then eventually these things work themselves out. So, just kind of learning to push and stay through.
What would you say the most rewarding part of your job is?
Ooh, probably. And I want to just say, I'm not going to just say the relationship with patients because it goes way beyond that. So this is going to sound crazy, but this is one of the coolest things that ever happens. A lot of times I'll be thinking of a patient and I don't know why. And I never look at my schedule. Like I never look to see ahead. I just deal with what's in front of me today. And it never fails. If I'm thinking about this patient, I'm kind of ruminating about her, she'll show up in like 2 weeks. And I'll be like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you." She's like, "Yeah." And it's actually really cool to have that connection. So that's actually one of the most rewarding aspects of my practice is the connection that I've had with our patient.
And then you also told me how important family, friends, and your whole life is important to you. How do you make time for all of those things while also working?
That's a good question. Actually, I didn't do such a good job of it early on in my career. And I realized I was like, wait a minute, no, nobody is an island. You can't just work. And I was like, wait a minute, make sure you develop the rest of your life. And so, I was just intentional about it. I was like, I need to make sure I'm still here. I still like to dance. I'm still a member of a sorority, the best sorority. So I just, I had to be intentional and say, okay, make sure to prioritize family and friends as much as you do work. And now it's kind of the opposite. Now I'm like, hey, listen, work would need to fit into family and friends.
And then what advice would you give to students who are interested in women's health or being an OBGYN?
I'd say if you're really interested, do it. But keep your mind open. There's so many ways to do exactly that you should explore those options. Just like what you're doing here is just phenomenal, right? You have a platform and an opportunity to explore women's health, even if you're not a physician yet. And I mean, I think when we look at technology and look at where we are, there are so many opportunities to explore your interests in ways that we would have never thought of. I'm like, why not explore it?
Is there anything that students can do now to start exploring these kind of decisions?
Yeah, you should. Yes, you can. Certainly talking to physicians, you can go online. There are conferences to attend, things like that. Um, but definitely having a conversation with a physician or someone who's in medicine is an excellent way to start. So,
Is there any other last thoughts you have?
no, I just feel like the future of medicine is safe when we have young ladies like yourself doing what you're doing. I
Well,
love
thank
this.
you.
It's wonderful. You're welcome.
Well, guys, that's the end of the interview. Thank you so much for tuning in to Medicine in the Making. I hope today's conversation gave you guys a little bit more inspiration, clarity, or motivation into your further journey in the healthcare field. If you want to see more updates, guest highlights, or interviews, make sure to follow the Instagram at Medicine in the Making. And remember to keep learning, keep dreaming, and remember that the future of medicine starts with you.